Hi, this is Eric Burkholder here with Jordan Bradford, Senior Advisor here at Burkholder Wealth Management, and we're coming to you from our new office. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to be up here and mostly moved in. Viewers can't see this, but there's a few pieces missing, but hey, we're up here. We're off and running. So today we wanted to do a video on planning and wealth management in general because um, that is a term that gets thrown around a lot in this industry, and it means a lot of different things. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the BWM way and how we view it, and the things we cover, and why we think it's so important to have a fully comprehensive wealth plan. So, maybe Jordan, tell us where do we typically start with a prospect or client?
Yeah, great point. We generally start right away with identifying, two components, and that's really, where are you at today with your financial goals, and what are your financial goals, and just figuring out, what's that starting point. It's like if you imagine, like back when you were younger, you may have done a road trip with your family, and driven all the way across the country, right? And that's awesome and a really fun experience. But if you don't know where your starting point is and you don't know where your ending point is, you're just aimlessly driving around the country, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a lot of fun, but it can also be pretty stressful if you do have a destination in mind.
Right.
And I think that's a really good analogy for your financial plan, is that you have to have the starting point and the end point, pretty well defined, and that's what your goals are and what your net worth statement. That's going to be where are we at today, so that we know, how fast can we drive, which roads do we need to take.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important as the baseline of your financial plan.
Right, and that applies regardless of if it's a multi-million-dollar estate and you're looking at like estate tax issues and estate planning, or you're been a hardworking teacher your whole life and you've got a 401k that you're going to have to make last the rest of your life. I mean, regardless of where you fall on that spectrum, like the plan actually should drive all the investments and all those decisions, and starting with where are you at now.
Yeah.
Speaking of road trip, I like the analogy of like going to buy a car. And a lot of investment advisors, financial advisors, are really more set up this way, where you walk in, they say, hey, here's our Corvette 2-seater. It's fantastic. It's what we have. It's top of the line, and we think you should buy it. And you're like, okay, great. And then you buy it, and you're like, well, but I'm taking my family to Colorado this summer, and a 2-seater is not going to work, and it can't tow anything. And so I think that is where a lot of things are lost in translation, because they're just selling you the product, the investment, without really even understanding what you'd be better off with a beat up old Suburban than a Corvette in that scenario, because at least a Suburban can fit your family in it, right? So having the right plan in place is first, and then you can figure out the right vehicle.
Yeah, generally I find that, your financial advisor, whoever you use, should ask you a lot of really good questions and be really inquisitive about your life, about what your goals are, what you want to accomplish, and less on, what that advisor thinks is the best way to do financial planning or financial advising, because every client is different. Everybody has different goals, different aspirations, different things that are important to you. And if your advisor doesn't have a good idea of what that is and figure out a way to get in sync with you on that, then there's always going to be that disconnect. You're always going to be driving the wrong vehicle. You're always going to be, slightly off of what you should be doing, and really making your financial plan be really robust and efficient for your goals.
Yeah, exactly. So what we try to do here is really, ask those questions, figure out, before we even recommend an investment plan, what is it you actually need. And a lot of times, people don't know. I mean, this is a new experience for most people, and so that's where all those questions go, and we get into net worth. And I mean, what other areas that do you feel like we really kind of dive into that are important for that planning process?
Yeah, I think that, one of the areas that often gets overlooked, but I think is really important as you go through the planning process, is that budgeting and cash flow planning side of things. And that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. For some people, budgeting is, I am spending more money than I am making, and I need to figure out a way to stop the bleeding financially. And that's very different than, I am, fine, my income is great, cash flow seems to be really good. I don't necessarily know what I spend though, but I want to retire. And that's a common one we see is someone comes in and they're ready to retire in, 3 to 5 years, and they have no sense of what they're spending. But they save good money and they make good money, but that difference between, the $300,000 that they make and whatever amount that they spend could be either really vast or maybe it's pretty narrow. And we don't know for sure until we sit down and really do a cash flow plan to determine how much money are we going to need at retirement.
Right.
That's a big question.
Absolutely. And then, for those people who have done very well, and like you said, spending is not an issue, but then they start looking at, hey, I've accumulated a lot of wealth. How much can I start passing on now? And there's some nervousness around, like, I know I want to do something, or maybe I want to support a charity or a foundation, but I have no idea how much I can give away.
Right.
I'd like to give some now, but I don't know if I can. Another huge cash flow issue that you can't even start to look at investments until we figure out, like, how much cash do you need and what is the purpose of that.
Yeah. I think the cash flow plan or the budget really helps flow into the rest of the plan, right? The meat of the plan, which I think oftentimes starts with the retirement plan.
Yep.
And that's just kind of the nature of our business. It doesn't necessarily mean that the retirement plan is the most important plan for everyone, because some people would sacrifice retirement or at least delay retirement to help pay for their kids' education, or to potentially be able to give more money away, right? There's a lot of different factors that play into this, but the retirement plan just happens to usually be that first one that everyone wants to get at least a good sense of, like, do I have this nailed down first?
Right. Exactly.
Because it is a big deal. You want to make sure that, when you stop working, you don't have to, get the train back on the tracks 5 years in because, you've miscalculated how much money you spend on a monthly basis, or you haven't adequately, figured out, hey, in retirement, we plan on traveling a lot more, and travel can be really expensive.
Yeah.
It can also be budget friendly, but, when you're traveling and you're away from home, you're generally eating out more. You're still probably paying for a mortgage back at home, and yet you're living somewhere else and paying for those nights.
Right. Yeah. And, even our clients who say they love their job, they'll never retire, that's still the kind of the starting point, because, over half of retirement situations are out of our control. Health or losing a job together actually are over 50% of reasons for retirement. So even if someone says, I'll work forever, I love what I do, that is a good starting point in the plan to say, like, well, if you had to retire for some reason outside your control, what is that date? How much could you spend? And that dovetails into, the additional planning areas, which are also equally as important.
Yeah, I think one of the areas that we at Burkholder Wealth Management, we spend a lot of time talking on with clients, and I think part of this is because it doesn't really happen at a lot of other firms. So, clients aren't necessarily used to this, but it's really important, is the tax planning side of things. And I think the reason most advisors don't touch on tax planning is typically because they're not a CPA, and there's this assumption that your CPA handles your tax plan. And there may be some CPAs that do tax planning, but I think we found that the vast majority of CPAs, when they're working with someone on their personal tax returns, it's about minimizing taxes in that given year and not planning out maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. And that's where having your financial plan have a tax plan component to it can really make things efficient over a long period of time. I personally care less about paying taxes at a lower rate this year. I want to pay the lowest amount of taxes over my lifetime. And I think that having that good plan in place that's flexible will allow you to be able to make those maneuvers, and maybe one year you pay a little bit more in taxes. But if that means that you paid less over a 10-year period, that's still less dollars overall. And I think that's what's really important to think about.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on the importance of having, that team or your advisors all on the same page. And we really take the ownership of that here with our clients, is saying, let's reach out to the CPA, let's reach out to the attorney, insurance broker, whoever it is, and make sure these things all work together. Because you're right. And we work with some fantastic CPAs. What they don't love telling their clients is, hey, your tax bill is going to be higher this year.
Right.
So when we say, hey, a Roth conversion might be a good idea, it's not that they're against it, but their job is to minimize taxes.
Yeah.
Our job is to manage their plan. And so when we pull each other and talk either on a phone call or in the same room, I mean, that makes a big difference because now we're working together instead of investment advisor over here doing stuff, CPA over here doing stuff, and we end up, bumping heads because we're not working together.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And I don't think that we would ever recommend that you just stop using a tax professional, right? We think CPAs can be incredibly valuable to you, and candidly, I use a CPA to do my own tax returns. I don't like to do it myself. I don't like the potential of making an error because I'm not up to date on maybe the newest tax codes, so I just want a CPA to be able to look over everything for me. And we want you to have really good partners in place as well. And if you don't have that already, that's where we can come in and we can connect you with the right pieces. And we operate kind of like the quarterback in this situation, right? We're going to get the ball to the right teammates at the right time. And if we have to deliver some news on, hey, this year is going to pay a little bit more in taxes, but we're looking at the 5-year numbers and we're going to be lower overall in taxes over 5 years, that's our responsibility. And that's what we take that on. And I think that's a really good tax plan, is to have someone who's capable and willing to tell you that news, even if it's something that you may not want to hear today, but you'll be happy about it in 3 to 5 years.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then obviously when we talk about taxes and then in relation to investing, those are very tightly connected as well, because at the end of the day, we're trying to maximize after tax return.
Right.
And there are a lot of moving pieces that go into that as far as asset location, tax loss harvesting, types of accounts utilized. And so, again, it's a fully built out plan. You have to touch on all those things. It is everything affects every other piece of your plan. So there's no way you cannot look at it. That's our opinion when looking at a full plan.
Yeah, we look at insurance as well. And, we're not big insurance salesmen. And it's rare that we would even recommend for life insurance that people need anything more than a really good term policy, or maybe a couple of term policies to fit the right timeline. But we want to look at that insurance because we want to make sure that your insurance is adequate for the amount of risk that you're willing to take too. Because that's a big deal, is managing risk. We talk about that a lot with investments, but sometimes that gets separated too much from insurance. And advisors either really love insurance to the point where maybe they're selling it a little too often, or they just don't want to touch it at all. And they're probably doing a disservice to their clients by not even looking at it or being willing to have that discussion. I don't want to just send my client off and say, oh, you know what, you have a question about life insurance. Just go down the street and talk to, the life insurance agent with the best reviews on Google. It's probably not necessarily the best way to do that. And I think that having an advisor or a real planner who can look at everything and say, I've identified some areas where you may need some additional coverage and insurance. Here's why, and here's what we would recommend. Let's get you connected with an insurance person who can help make sure that gets done correctly.
Right, exactly. And then, so let's see, we've covered retirement planning, budgeting, somewhat investment planning, insurance.
I think the last component to it is the estate planning piece. We talked a little bit about education planning, but that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone. But estate planning, it can be a really big deal. And a lot of people, they think of estate planning and they may think, oh, I have to have tens of millions of dollars to need an estate plan. And that just simply is not the case. I think everybody needs a will, and a will is part of an estate plan.
Right.
That could be an entire estate plan for a really simple, small estate.
Right.
Everybody needs some degree of an estate plan because none of us are going to live forever.
Right.
Even if you think you are, even if you're in great health, eventually, right, that bill comes due, and you want to make sure that your assets and your personal financial life isn't a burden on the rest of your family, and that's where a great estate plan can come into play.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point, because I think a lot of people assume that a trust means multi-millions of dollars. That only very, very wealthy people have a trust, And actually, at a fairly low level of assets or net worth, a trust really starts to make sense, especially when you have children. There's guardianship issues and who controls the money and who could watch the kids if something were to happen to you. So very quickly, almost everyone needs a pretty solid estate plan. And then obviously that gets more and more complicated up to, some people are in estate tax situations. So that's some very complex estate planning. But regardless, it has to be addressed.
Yeah. And I think when you look at all of that, especially within the estate plan, you want your planner or advisor to also understand that if at some point you're going to pass and leave assets to your kids or grandkids, it's great to have your planner involved with those people. And I think that's a big deal. It's something that a lot of advisors don't really do in the industry, but I think it's really important to get connected with that younger generation that as a client, you want your advisor to be working with your kids, because you don't want your kids to all of a sudden maybe inherit a pretty large sum of money that they are not accustomed to managing, and then just go out and have to just find somebody on the street. You'd rather have that relationship started. So this is why a lot of times we want to meet our clients' children, especially the adult children, and say, hey, let's start getting them involved in financial planning. Let's build out a plan for them. And then at some point in time, right, when that that death happens, we want to be there to help facilitate the transfer of assets in a way that isn't adding additional stress to an already really stressful situation.
Right, exactly. And like it seems like even just sitting here talking, we're covering a lot, right? And I think it all this can be pretty overwhelming, which is why, again, going back to kind of our processes, we really try to take this one step at a time, right? Obviously, like we've gone through here pretty quickly, but we start with goals, that kind of net worth creation, or where are you at currently. We do use basically the state-of-the-art software available in this industry, because this is a lot of information. We're not like back with a pencil and pen jotting stuff down. We're big believers in technology and being able to aggregate all this. So where is the client at now? And then where are they trying to get to? And then we start building, and then typically retirement plan is kind of the first one, whether they are way ahead or way behind or somewhere in the middle, like where is that retirement plan? And then all these other things start kind of kicking off from there. So, what's the right tax plan to get to that retirement plan? Or if there's other, if it's college planning or charitable planning, things like that, and then insurance and estate planning. And we really only briefly mentioned investments, which obviously is a very key piece of what we do. I think you mentioned it maybe at the very beginning, but that's because ultimately the like you said, the investments is a means to an end. And we think they're extremely important. We just think you can't even start there until you cover all these other areas. And there's a lot of wrong ways to invest, but there's multiple right ways as well. We think we really truly believe in our strategy and its ability to accomplish what people want. But ultimately, that's the tool. It's like asking your architect, like, well, what brand of tool do you use? And like, that's important. You don't want like a saw that's going to break while they're building your house. But ultimately, like the plan, the engineering behind that building is what's the most important, and the investments support that. So.
Yeah, and if you've watched our other videos, or many of our other videos, you know that we are really passionate about the way we do investment management, and we love that side of what we do. But we also realize that, as you mentioned, it's a means to an end for almost everybody. Most people don't wake up and their number one goal is, I want to have great investments. Even if you think that that's your goal, it's probably really truly the underlying goal is probably something more specific, something more personal. Like, I don't want to have to worry about, ever having to go back to work in retirement because my dad had to do that. Or, I've seen, financial pitfalls from family members or friends, and I don't want to fall into those same traps. So then you focus a lot on the investments, but we want to bring things back to that personal level, focus on what is truly important to you, so that we can then assign the right investments to those goals and make sure that that is what's aligned. Because if that isn't aligned, it's going to be a lot of friction. And you're gonna be frustrated when the market is not doing as well as you hoped. And then when the market's doing really well, you're going to be wondering if you could be doing even better, rather than looking at everything and saying, hey, we're making a lot of progress. a year ago, look at where we were. Look at where we are today compared to that. And our goals are getting closer and closer to us.
Yep, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, I think we try to keep these videos short, but like we like to talk. We obviously are passionate about what we do, and planning's, a core, basically the most important thing we do on a daily basis. So, we'll do some more videos on maybe pick out some more of the individual components of the plan and get into more details. But hopefully that gives everyone out there an idea of what kind of our process looks like, and then what we would recommend, regardless of who you're working with or if you're a do-it-yourself investor, that you should be looking at all these areas. And if you're not, I mean, I highly recommend that you reach out to someone or look at them yourself. So
yeah.
As always, if there's any additional questions, we love to answer. So shoot them over to us, give us a call, comment on the video, and otherwise we'll see you guys on the next one.
Thanks.
All right.